Men are extremely attracted to women who detach. There is a power in a woman who knows how to let go, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. She is not cold, she is complete. She doesn't beg for love, because she understands that true love is never earned through desperation. In a world where noise is confused for connection and attention mistaken for affection, the woman who detaches becomes a rare presence. She operates from identity, not insecurity, and in doing so, she draws the kind of man who is not just curious, but compelled. Because when a woman walks in purpose and peace, she becomes unforgettable. This is not about playing games, it's about becoming whole, and wholeness is magnetic. A woman who knows her worth never chases, she chooses. A woman who knows her worth is a force of nature. She walks with a quiet confidence, not born of arrogance, but of revelation. She has discovered something many still search for, a deep understanding of her value that does not require validation from another. She is not waiting to be chosen because she already chose herself, and because of that, she does not chase men, approval, or temporary attention. She chooses from a place of wholeness, not need. A man does not complete her, he must complement her. This posture of inner fullness is what makes her so powerfully attractive. She understands that her worth is not determined by who wants her, texts her, calls her, or compliments her. Her value was established long before any of those things entered the equation. You see, when a woman lacks a sense of worth, she often enters relationships from a deficit. She looks to love as a transaction to fill what's missing in her soul. She gives too much too soon, hoping to earn what should be freely reciprocated. She overextends, overexplains, and overcompensates, all while shrinking her standards just to hold on to something or someone, but in the end all that chasing does is prove to the other person that she is willing to lose herself to keep them, and what you compromise to keep, you will eventually resent. That is why a woman of worth does not chase. She lets go of the illusion that love must be pursued with desperation. Instead, she moves with discernment. She observes more than she speaks. She evaluates a man's consistency before she gives him access to her energy. She is not moved by sweet words. She is moved by solid actions. She knows that attraction without alignment is a trap, and because she values her peace more than her loneliness, she is not afraid to walk away from anything that costs her clarity. A woman who knows her worth doesn't get lost in fantasy. She remains rooted in reality. She doesn't build a future in her mind off of a few fleeting moments. She waits, watches, and weighs, and from that posture she chooses, not out of fear, but from vision. She knows that not every man deserves a seat at her table just because he brings flowers. She is not impressed by superficial effort, because her standards were not shaped by desperation, but by purpose. Men are drawn to this energy because it challenges them to rise. There is something about a woman who won't settle for less than she deserves that makes a man reevaluate what he's offering. She becomes the standard. She commands respect without saying a word. Her silence speaks louder than her pleading ever could. And if he cannot meet her where she stands, she doesn't beg him to stay. She simply steps aside, because she would rather be alone with her dignity than accompanied in dysfunction. This is not coldness, it is clarity, and clarity is costly. It requires a woman to walk away from temporary comfort in order to protect her permanent calling. This kind of woman knows that her time is sacred. She no longer entertains relationships that drain her, confuse her, or distract her from her destiny. She understands that energy is currency, and she refuses to spend hers on anything that does not yield growth. She does not manipulate, chase, or perform. She attracts, she aligns, she allows. Her spirit carries the kind of strength that doesn't need to dominate but also cannot be dismissed. She doesn't seek to prove herself to anyone, because people with real value don't audition for roles in someone else's life. They build their own stage. She doesn't base her identity on being chosen by a man. She bases it on being aligned with her assignment. And when the right man shows up, he won't be confused, distracted, or intimidated. He'll recognize her as a woman of vision, depth, and power, and he will know that being chosen by her is not a right, but a responsibility. This is why men are extremely attracted to women who detach, because detachment is not about disconnection, it is about distinction. She separates herself from the noise, the games, and the emotional chaos that often define modern dating. She is not impressed by how quickly a man pursues her, but how consistently he shows up over time. And when a man realizes he cannot manipulate her with charm or captivate her with shallow gestures, he must decide whether he will rise to the standard or fade into background. Either way, she remains unmoved, because her goal was never to chase. It was always to choose. So to every woman listening, hear this. You don't need to chase to be chosen. You need to understand that your worth is not up for negotiation. Your presence is not a bargain, it's a blessing. And the moment you realize that, you will stop lowering your standards for love and start raising your awareness of who deserves access to you. When you live from a place of worth, you will never beg again. You will never settle again. You will never chase again, because the woman who knows her worth moves differently. She doesn't compete, she creates. She doesn't chase, she calls forth. She doesn't shrink, she shines. And from that posture, everything that is meant for her flows effortlessly, not forcefully. Detachment is not rejection. It is the revelation of self-respect. Detachment is often misunderstood. To many it looks like coldness, like indifference, like walking away. But true detachment is not about rejecting others. It's about protecting the sacred space of your self-respect. It is not an act of arrogance, but an act of alignment. A woman who has embraced detachment is not void of emotion. She is full of wisdom. She has learned that not everything that touches her heart deserves to stay in her life. She has understood that presence without peace is a threat to her purpose. And so she lets go, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Because detachment, at its core, is the revelation that love should never cost you your clarity, your dignity, or your destiny. This woman has evolved past the stage where attention makes her feel valued. She no longer needs someone's affection to validate her beauty or someone's availability to prove her worth. She knows who she is, and because of that, she's careful about what she entertains. Detachment is not about pretending not to care. It is about caring deeply for yourself first. It is the quiet strength of a woman who has cried enough, waited long enough, compromised enough, and finally decided, I am enough. She no longer explains why she walked away. She no longer pleads to be understood. She no longer stays in places where she has to keep proving her value. Her self-respect has become her compass, and if something threatens her peace, she doesn't try to fix it. She releases it. Men may be initially confused by this kind of strength. Some mistake her silence for ego. Others believe her distance means disinterest. But the wise ones, those grounded in vision and healed in character, recognize it for what it is, a woman who has done the inner work. A woman who has suffered the sting of settling and has chosen never to do so again. She doesn't entertain confusion. She doesn't participate in inconsistency. She doesn't respond to half love, because she understands that what you tolerate becomes your standard. And when you begin to detach from what no longer serves you, you don't lose anything. You make room for everything meant for you. This posture of detachment is not a weapon, it is a witness. It testifies to the world that this woman is rooted in something deeper than approval. She is not moved by the highs and lows of emotion. She is not easily swayed by charming words or temporary thrills. Her emotions are disciplined, her heart is guarded, not walled, but watched over. She does not allow just anyone to come in and disturb the sanctuary she has built within. And this makes her deeply attractive not just to men, but to opportunities, to growth, to divine alignment. Because when you stop begging for crumbs, you start attracting tables. When you stop chasing, you start choosing. And when you stop fearing loss, you start living in abundance. A detached woman does not fear the silence after she sets a boundary. She welcomes it, because she knows that if someone falls away after she says no, they were never anchored in respect to begin with. She does not lose sleep over unanswered messages or unreciprocated energy. Her focus has shifted from being wanted to being aligned. She no longer fights to stay in rooms where she has to shrink herself. She has learned that detachment is the gateway to freedom. Freedom from emotional chaos, from unnecessary drama, from the constant need to explain her worth. She doesn't live on the roller coaster of other people's opinions anymore. She walks the steady path of self-honor, and it is this peace, this unwavering calm in her soul, that draws in the right man, a man who is not intimidated by her detachment, but intrigued by it, a man who doesn't see her boundaries as barriers, but as an invitation to step up, a man who understands that her silence isn't a game, it's a mirror, it reflects his actions, his intentions, and his growth. The right man knows that detachment is not the absence of love, but the presence of standards. He rises not just to win her heart, but to protect the environment that allowed that heart to flourish. So let every woman hear this truth. You do not owe your presence to anyone who cannot honor it. You do not have to remain emotionally available to someone who keeps you emotionally unstable. You do not have to keep proving your loyalty to someone who hasn't earned your trust. Detachment is not about punishing others. It is about preserving yourself. It is the bold declaration that your peace is too precious to be gambled with. And once you truly understand this, your entire life changes. You stop begging for closure and start giving yourself clarity. You stop justifying chaos and start choosing peace. You stop chasing people and start chasing purpose. When you detach, you don't become less loving. You become more powerful, because your love is no longer scattered in desperation. It is focused, it is intentional, and it is sacred. The woman who embraces detachment walks with a power that is not loud, but undeniable. She is not reckless with her heart. She is responsible with it. And because of that, she will never be an option again. She will always be a choice, not just for someone else, but first and foremost for herself. When a woman is full within, she attracts without striving. There is a beauty, a quiet fire, and a magnetic force that surrounds a woman who is full within. She doesn't enter a room looking for attention. It simply finds her, not because she demands it, but because she carries something rare. In her wholeness, she has stopped waiting for someone to complete her. She is not looking for someone to rescue her, save her, or even define her. She has already done that for herself. Her fulfillment is not tied to a man's presence or absence. She is grounded in her identity, rooted in her values, and focused on her purpose, and because of this, she becomes deeply attractive, not in the shallow sense of beauty, but in the deeper realm of energy, intention, and essence. She does not strive, and yet she draws. She does not chase, and yet she captivates. Because when a woman is full within, the world around her shifts to meet her where she stands. Striving is often the language of lack. It is the behavior of someone who has not yet realized that they are already enough. The woman who strives for love, validation, or attention is often still battling the lie that she must earn what should be given freely, but the woman who is whole has learned that her worth is not a reward. It's a revelation. She doesn't force connection. She doesn't beg for love. She doesn't shrink herself to fit into someone's limited vision. She has tasted peace and refuses to return to chaos. Her standards are Not based on fear of being alone, they are anchored in the joy of being aligned. Because she is full, she can give without losing herself. She can love without losing her voice. She can walk away without falling apart. This kind of fullness is not found in external things. It is not built on a man's compliments, a crowd's applause, or society's approval. It is birthed in the secret place, where a woman has met herself, healed herself, and embraced herself. She has faced the mirror and confronted the wounds. She has sat in silence and made peace with her past. She has shed the layers of insecurity, comparison, and codependency, and in their place she has clothed herself with purpose, self-respect, and vision. Now she doesn't need anyone to tell her who she is. She walks in the truth she already knows, and this self-awareness radiates. It's felt in her words, her walk, her energy. She's not trying to impress. She simply expresses who she is without apology. Men feel this energy even if they can't explain it. They are drawn to her presence because it feels different. She doesn't carry the anxious energy of someone desperate to be noticed. She's not operating from a need to prove herself. She doesn't overextend, overgive, or overstay. She is centered, and that centeredness speaks louder than anything she could say. A man may not understand why he's so captivated, but something in her calmness, her clarity, and her confidence unsettles his usual patterns. She disrupts the cycle of superficial attraction and calls forth something deeper. She doesn't ask for authenticity. She requires it simply by being herself. When a woman is full within, she becomes selective without apology. She's not arrogant, she's aware of how sacred her time is, aware of how powerful her presence is, aware that her love is a gift, not a bargaining chip. So, she doesn't audition for roles in someone's life. She doesn't compete for a man's attention. She doesn't sacrifice her peace just to keep someone around. Her inner fullness becomes her filter. If someone cannot meet her with the same level of emotional maturity, integrity, and purpose, she doesn't force it. She lets it go, because she knows that alignment never has to be forced, and what is meant for her will come, not through striving, but through synergy. This fullness allows her to move differently. She is patient, not because she lacks desire, but because she refuses to settle. She is joyful, not because everything is perfect, but because she no longer ties her happiness to outcomes she can't control. She is radiant, not because she fits a certain mold, but because her soul is at peace. She is powerful, not in dominance but in presence. Her life speaks a silent sermon, I am already whole, and from that wholeness she attracts, not with effort but with essence. The world will try to convince women that they must do more, be more, sacrifice more to be worthy of love, but the truth is the opposite. The more a woman comes home to herself, the more love that is true and right will find its way to her. Not the kind of love that demands she shrink, change, or lose herself, but the kind that sees her, honors her, and grows with her. The kind that is drawn to her, not because she was available, but because she was authentic. To every woman listening, stop striving, stop begging, stop bending. You are not empty, you are not missing anything, you are not falling behind. Become full within. Fill yourself with purpose, with peace, with truth, with vision, with grace, and watch what happens. The right opportunities, the right people, and the right love will not need to be chased. They will be attracted to the version of you that is no longer seeking outside what you've already built within. A man is drawn to mystery, not desperation. There is something undeniably captivating about a woman who doesn't lay all her cards on the table, who isn't moved by attention, who doesn't rush to explain herself or make herself overly available. It's not manipulation, it's mystery, and mystery is magnetic. A man is drawn to what he cannot immediately grasp, to what requires him to lean in, slow down, and pay attention. Desperation, on the other hand, repels. It's loud, it's restless, it's rooted in fear. It pushes instead of pulls. It speaks too much, gives too soon, reveals too quickly, and demands too often. But a woman who carries mystery knows the difference between availability and accessibility. She is present, but not predictable. She is open, but not obvious. And that contrast between grace and reserve, warmth and restraint, is what sets her apart in a world where too many are trying too hard to be seen. Mystery doesn't mean being confusing. It means being complete. It means not needing to overshare your story or oversell your worth. It means letting a man earn access to your deeper layers, not handing him the keys before he's even shown up with consistency. A mysterious woman understands that depth cannot be rushed. She doesn't measure connection by how quickly someone falls for her, but by how steadily they show up. She values pacing because she values herself. She knows that if a man truly desires to know her, he will have the patience to uncover her soul, not just pursue her surface. Desperation, however, is always in a hurry. It mistakes speed for security. It gives too much, hoping to secure a place. It's rooted in fear of loss rather than confidence in value. But when a woman is anchored in who she is, she does not fear being misunderstood for a moment, because she knows she cannot be ignored for long. Men are biologically wired to pursue, but that pursuit is driven by intrigue. When there is nothing left to discover, the pursuit dies, and too often women mistake transparency for connection, believing that giving all of themselves up front will lead to lasting love, but it doesn't. What it often leads to is emotional exhaustion, because true intimacy takes time. A mysterious woman does not withhold, she reveals with discernment. She knows when to share and when to stay silent. She isn't playing hard to get, she's simply hard to forget. Her presence lingers because she doesn't try to force it. She is felt more in her restraint than others are in their excess. Her mystery is not a mask, it's a mirror. It reflects the strength of her boundaries and the depth of her soul. The desperate woman, by contrast, often lives in a place of scarcity. She believes that if she doesn't act fast, if she doesn't give more, if she doesn't prove her worth, she will lose her chance. But love that must be chased is not love, it's anxiety in disguise. Desperation says, please pick me. Mystery says, I choose me, and if you align with that, we'll walk together. Desperation waits by the phone, checks for every text, and loses sleep over silence. Mystery continues to move forward. She doesn't pause her life waiting for someone to catch up. She doesn't rearrange her entire world around someone who hasn't even earned a seat in it. And that self-possession is exactly what turns heads, not just physically, but spiritually. Because when a woman knows she doesn't need anyone to complete her, she becomes a magnet for the kind of man who doesn't want to consume her, but to contribute to her life. Mystery is spiritual. It is not just about what is seen, but what is sensed. It is the art of being deeply rooted, yet softly spoken. It is the ability to stand in your truth without having to broadcast every detail. A mysterious woman listens more than she speaks. She asks better questions than the ones she answers. She doesn't fill silence with noise. She fills space with presence, and her presence carries weight. It makes a man think. It invites him into reflection. It challenges him to rise, not because she says so, but because being around her awakens something in him. She's not interested in being someone's project. She's interested in being someone's partner, and that kind of clarity cuts through all pretense. There's a common mistake women make when they confuse vulnerability with exposure. Vulnerability is powerful when it's earned and safe. But exposure is when you lay your heart bare in hopes that someone will handle it gently without first proving they can. Mystery allows room for discernment. It doesn't demand answers in the first conversation. It doesn't spill everything on the first date. It honors the process of learning, the unfolding of connection, the patience of real intimacy. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to hurry you into knowing me. If you're meant to see me, you will. And when you do, it will be worth the wait. Desperation feels like pressure. It clings, it fears, it smothers, but mystery breathes, it invites, it steadies, it expands, it says, here I am. But only if you're ready. It doesn't play games, but it doesn't tolerate them either. It operates from belief that what is real cannot be forced, and what is meant will never require begging. A mysterious woman does not need to convince a man to see her worth. Her life already does that. Her peace already does that. Her standards already do that. She doesn't need to announce what she brings to the table. She is the table, and if someone doesn't see it, she does not lower her light. She walks away. So to every woman who has been told to try harder, give more, be less much, be quicker to please, let this truth set you free. You are not here to chase love. You are not here to beg for attention. You are not here to exhaust yourself proving your value. You are here to be a woman of depth, grace, and mystery, to embody the kind of strength that does not need to shout, to carry the kind of presence that cannot be ignored. Stop explaining yourself to those who are not listening. Stop pouring into people who only take. Stop making your love cheap by offering it to everyone. Return to your mystery, return to your stillness, return to your worth. Because when a man senses that you are not desperate, when he realizes you are content in your own skin and full in your own life, it awakens something deeper in him, not just attraction, but respect. And from respect flows pursuit, not out of impulse, but out of intention. Her absence speaks louder than her presence ever begged. There comes a moment in every woman's journey when she realizes her silence has more weight than her words, her absence more power than her presence ever pleaded for. She stops chasing closure. She stops repeating herself. She stops over-explaining, overextending, and overcompensating. She understands that her worth was never meant to be proven. It was meant to be known. And when she finally walks away, not in anger but in awareness, not in haste but in healing, the echo of her departure leaves a silence that roars louder than any argument, any tears, any demands she once made for someone to understand her value. Her absence becomes her final word, her most eloquent expression of self-respect. It is no longer about teaching someone how to love her. It is about removing herself from those who refuse to learn. A woman who learns the power of walking away is a woman who has reclaimed her identity. She doesn't storm out for attention. She exits in peace, because now she realizes that presence is a gift, and if it is not honored, it will be withdrawn. Her love was never meant to be begged for. Her time was never meant to be wasted. Her energy was never meant to be drained in places where her light was dimmed. And so, without noise, she leaves, not because she stopped loving, but because she started loving herself more. Her absence is not a punishment, it's a proclamation. It announces to the world that she refuses to negotiate her worth any longer. When a woman pulls back, everything becomes clear. Her silence strips away the illusions. Her distance reveals the truth that presence once masked. Those who took her for granted begin to feel the coldness where her warmth once lived. Those who ignored her consistency begin to notice the emptiness left behind by her departure, because she was not just there, she was invested. She didn't just show up, she poured in, and now that she is gone, everything she held together starts to unravel. She was the glue, the peace, the nurturer, the foundation. And in her absence, all of that is felt, deeply and undeniably, not because she shouted her importance, but because her leaving revealed it. Men often do not understand this until it is too late. They are so used to a woman's forgiveness, her understanding, her resilience, that they mistake it for weakness. They confuse her patience with passivity, but every woman has a threshold, and when that threshold is crossed, she no longer argues. She exits, not to hurt, but to heal, not to wound, but to wake up. because a woman who has discovered her power no longer begs to be seen. She simply disappears from the spaces that refuse to see her, and her absence becomes a mirror reflecting the consequences of neglect. It forces reflection in those who assumed she'd always be there. No matter how little she received in return, her absence becomes her standard. It becomes the line she draws in the sand that says, I will not live a life of emotional poverty. It is not revenge, it is revelation. She no longer believes in fixing what is constantly breaking her. She no longer ties her future to someone who can't even handle her present. She no longer wastes her divine energy trying to resuscitate one-sided relationships. She chooses stillness. She chooses space, and that space, though quiet, screams with a message that is impossible to ignore. You had access, and you misused it. Now you have distance, and you must live with it. A woman who walks away gracefully does not need to post about it, talk about it, or seek validation for it. Her peace is proof. Her growth is evidence. She knows who she is. She knows what she brings. She is not afraid of solitude, in fact. Solitude is where she remembers her strength. It is where she becomes reacquainted with the parts of herself that got buried under compromise. It is where she blooms again, this time not in someone else's shadow, but in her own light. And when she returns to herself, she does so with deeper roots and higher standards, not bitter but better, not hardened but healed. Those who took her for granted begin to realize that she was never demanding. She was just dedicated. She wasn't too much. She was too real, and it wasn't that she asked for too much. It was that they offered too little. But by then she is gone, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too deeply to remain in a space that couldn't return it. Her absence teaches what her presence could not. It humbles, it convicts, it creates a space for reflection that her words could never reach, because sometimes the most powerful message a woman can send is walking away with her dignity intact, and that absence, that holy silence, is not just a loss to others, it is a gain for her. It's a returning to self, a deep inhale of fresh air after holding her breath for too long. It is freedom, it is clarity, it is the beginning of something new, and from that sacred space she rebuilds, she reclaims, she rises, and in her rising she becomes a beacon, not for those who only wanted her for convenience, but for those who recognize her as a crown, not a burden. She stops running after those who cannot keep up. She starts attracting those who walk in the same direction, at the same pace, with the same intentionality. The woman who has mastered absence has mastered herself. She is not swayed by fleeting emotions or temporary attention. She is led by vision, by purpose, by self-worth. And because of that, she does not fear being alone. She fears being misused. She does not settle for being needed. She desires to be valued. And if she must remove herself to be remembered, she will do so, not with bitterness, but with a quiet power that reshapes the atmosphere she leaves behind. Her absence becomes standard. It is no longer about being chosen. It is about choosing herself. So let this be known: when a woman stops showing up, it is not sudden. It is the result of being unheard, unseen, and unappreciated for far too long. And when she finally chooses to walk away, her absence will speak volumes. Not with cruelty, but with conviction, not with noise, but with nobility, because she has learned that her love is not loud, it is loyal, and when that loyalty is dismissed, she does not fight, she does not shout, she does not beg, she simply leaves, and in doing so, she delivers the loudest message of all: you lost access to something rare, not because I was too much, but because you gave too little.